Hi, everybody. Gonna pull up our presentation and get started here in just a second. Get my webcam going. There we go. And while we wait for other people to join, I am going to ask if you would fill out this little poll right here. What do you hope to get out of this webinar? So if you are on, hopefully you can hear me. If you can't, then nobody will fill this out and I'll know that nobody can hear me. But if you can hear me, go ahead and take a minute to answer this question of what do you hope to get out of this webinar? And we'll wait for others to get on. If you're just logging on, go ahead and complete this poll that you see on the front screen. We're taking a few moments to let others get logged on. And you should be able to see each other's responses. The responses are anonymous, so don't worry about how intelligent you sound. Nobody will know who said what. There's a weird light on me. Maybe I should lean back. Okay. We'll give it one more minute as we wait for people to log on. And if you're just logging on and joining us, go ahead and take a minute to fill out this poll of what do you hope to get out of this webinar. So far, we have people saying practical tips that can be put into practice. That's something we all hope to get, right? Learn more about the 11 elements or the 11 highly qualified elements of CTE, I'm assuming. Determine where there's anything I should share with teachers, whether there's anything I should share with teachers. Ideas for PBL to support our CTE teachers. Learn how to meet 11 elements with PBL. Greater clarity that I can share with our participating sites, especially for new CTE and admin. And ideas for projects and how to implement them with teachers. Excellent. I'll leave this up for a second while I welcome you all, and if we have any late joiners coming on. Hi, happy CTE month. February is CTE month if you did not know. This is a webinar about project-based learning and the 11 elements of high-quality CTE. And I am going to hide this poll away so we can take a minute to look at our Adobe Connect format. So you should be able to see me in the top right corner, hello, but I cannot see you. And you should be able to hear me, but I cannot hear you. We do have a chat box right here on our right-hand side underneath our list of attendees. So if you have any questions or comments as we go, please add them to the chat. Any questions, and I try to follow along with that chat, so go ahead and put those there. And then there's some little icons we can use so that you can engage with me and interact with me since I can't see you. So on the top bar, you should see a little icon of a person with their hand raised. And if you hover over it, it probably says set status. If you click the drop down arrow right next to that icon, there'll be other little graphics for you. There's a green check that says agree, a disagree button, a step away, little notifications for me if you need me to speak louder, to speak softer, to speed up, to slow down. If you want to laugh at something I say or something you see, or applaud something you agree with or want to encourage, all of those icons are there. So let's go ahead and practice. Go ahead and set yours to agree so we can practice using them. So that little drop down arrow right next to the raised hand person icon, and then there's a green agree check. And we have maybe about half of us are doing that. If you have any questions or if you're not sure how, you can add that to the chat. And if you already have yours, let's try clearing it. So once you've clicked on it, if you just click on it one more time, it should make it go away. So if you click on it once, you should not have to do the drop down again. You can just click on that icon. So you can see my name has a little green check mark. And if I click on that top bar again one more time, it clears it and it goes away. So go ahead and try clearing yours to go away. And if you can't figure it out, that's all right. If you have any questions, go ahead and add it to the chat. And we will move on now that we should mostly be somewhat comfortable with this format. I see somebody's typing, but I'll try to answer that as we go. My name is Lacey Boatman. I am a program manager here at the Napa County Office of Education in our College and Career Readiness Department. There's a little bit of my background. I was a teacher. Eric, we were doing the check boxes. We were practicing ways to interact. So on the top bar, there's a person with the raised icon, hand icon, and if you click the drop down arrow, there's little icons for agree, disagree, step away, things to notify me to speak louder, softer, speed up, slow down, laugh, applaud. So those are little ways you can engage with me and interact with me since I cannot see you or hear you. And you're also welcome to type in the chat. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I was a CTE teacher. You're welcome. And you can read more about it there. But I also want to know what your role is. So there's another poll coming up right now that you should see. And go ahead and tell me your role. If you're a teacher or an administrator, a CTE coordinator, a counselor, or other. And if you're an other, if you wouldn't mind adding what your role is to the chat so I can get a better sense of what it might be, please. Looks like we have a good mix, except counselors. It's hard to get counselors to some of these things. Technical assistance team, cool. Teacher and coordinator, great. CTEIG coordinator for our county, awesome. Anyone else, go ahead and add it. I actually think that's everyone. We might be missing someone, but that's okay. All right, I'll hide that away. Thank you. It's nice to know who we're speaking to. It's a nice little range. Okay, so my goals align with what your goals were from what I saw. My goals are that you leave here with a deeper understanding of how high-quality project-based learning and high-quality career technical education align and overlap. And part of that will be spending a little time defining those things and look at where they align and overlap. That you leave with a lot of tools and resources that you can immediately start using. And that you see some examples of project-based learning in CTE. So I'm going to share with you a number of actual examples of projects. Okay, so I love these little polls. Before I start talking a lot, I would like to know how familiar you are with project-based learning. So that's this first one here. How familiar are you with project-based learning? 1 is not familiar at all or not at all familiar to a 5, you're extremely familiar and you could be doing a webinar on project-based learning. And then the same thing for the 11 elements of high-quality CTE. How familiar are you? 1, not at all familiar, to a 5 at the bottom, you're extremely familiar, you know what they are, you could be giving this webinar about them. Again, your responses are anonymous. And you all should be able to see the responses as well. So kind of all over the board regarding PBL, that's good. We tend to know a little more about CTE. I think most of us are from the CTE realm, world. Okay, good to know. I'll wait another second if you need to add it or add your response. I'm missing a few people, but that's all right. Looks like somebody just added. Maybe one more. Okay, I'm going to hide these and we will continue to move on. So why am I talking to you today? Why about project-based learning and why how it aligns with CTE? PBL is a good way to learn. It's good for students, good for kids. I believe in it. And there's a lot of overlap between high quality project-based learning and high quality career technical education. I don't think the two should be exclusive. Neither of them should be looked at one more thing. There is a very happy marriage between both of them. And that's what we're going to look at today and why I'm presenting to you. There's a link here with more information about PBL from the Buck Institute regarding why project-based learning. And just so you know, if you click on one of the links in the slides, it should physically take you to another site, to a web page. And then to come back to the Adobe Connect, you do not have to log back on. There should be a little icon at the bottom of your taskbar or on your taskbar, wherever your taskbar lives. And it's like a green box with little boxes. If you click that, that should bring you back into this Adobe Connect format. So you don't need to log back on if you leave from one of the links. You should be able to just find that little icon to come back in. Okay. So one more poll before we, oh, this isn't a poll. I'm lying. I'm sorry. This is just your thoughts. If you could add what you think project-based learning is, what it means to you, what does project-based learning mean to you, to the chat, I would love to get your thoughts before I start preaching about PBL. So what do you think project-based learning is, and or what does project-based learning mean to you? Go ahead and add your thoughts into the chat, and I'll be quiet for a minute or two. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone else is typing. So we have finding or creating an answer or solution to a problem. Students learning by actually practicing the topic. It can be in the classroom or at a work site. Student-centered, real-world based problem solving. It's authentic, real-world learning. Business and industry simulated work done at school or at the work site. And a relevant, fun, yet rigorous, hands-on approach to learning that prepares students for future success. All really good answers. I want to make sure we are all on the same page around PBL before we start looking at how it aligns to CTE. So this is a really nice graphic, and if you click on it, it takes you to a Google Doc with the graph flipped horizontally on one side and then a chart on the back side. So I want to look at this graphic, the front page first, and then I'll share my screen with you and look at the chart. This shows the difference graphically between a traditional project that comes at the end of learning compared to project-based learning, where the project guides the learning. So traditionally, you might have a teacher who thinks they're doing project-based learning because they're doing a project, but that traditionally will look like the teacher front-loading the information, telling the students what they need to know in order to do a project at the end. And that's not project-based learning, that's doing a project. Project-based learning gives the project as the reason for what the students and why the students are learning. It presents a problem, like somebody said, that needs solving, or a question for students to think on and answer. And then within that question, there lies benchmarks, stepping stones to get to the final product. And with the benchmarks, there's still traditional teaching that can happen and still good teaching that should be taking place. There can be lectures, workshops, homework, research, labs. There should be a lot of reading and writing and reflection along the way. So your benchmarks, you may have revisions, drafts, iterations, and then it culminates in some kind of an authentic experience where students are presenting their learning. Their work lives for real purpose. It doesn't just go onto the refrigerator or in a trash can. And then reflection happens along the way and at the end. I'm going to share my screen with you so we can look at the back page or the second page, the chart on this document. There we go. And here it is. So this kind of shows a little, some examples of what it might actually look like if a teacher is doing a project versus project-based learning. I'm not going to read through all of these, but this can be a good resource. I often use this in workshops to have teachers just go through and kind of check off where they fall, and they might fall into different categories for different things. Another activity you can do is cut these out and change the colors, and then have teachers match and sort and put, you know, they see a little sentence like can be outlined in detail on one piece of paper by the teacher, and then the participants in the workshop place that either under project or project-based learning. So there's a lot that can be done with this, but it's a nice resource for looking at a little more detail of the difference between projects and PBL. Going back into my presentation now. There we go. Okay. So as I talked to you about PBL, there's a lot of there's a few different big players out there around project-based learning. There's the Buck Institute for Education, the New Tech Network. Those are just a few. There's more. And this is a newer group. They're called High Quality PBL, HQ PBL. There's a link to their website right down here. They're releasing a framework in March of this year, and they're supported by the Project Management Institute Education Foundation and by William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. They're also sponsored by Buck Institute for Education. These bottom two links I have not read yet. I just got these from a like a monthly newsletter type of thing, although it's not monthly, but a newsletter from HQ PBL. I'm signed up with them, and they sent out these links. So I haven't had a chance to read them, but I wanted to share them with you. It's a little more information about their work. But these are the elements they identify as being part of high quality project-based learning. That there's intellectual challenge and accomplishment, there's authenticity, a public product, collaboration, project management, and reflection. So we're going to look at the 6 A's from New Tech Network, and then what the Buck Institute outlines as quality PBL. And you'll see some commonalities maybe and some differences between all three. So these are the 6 A's of PBL. These are adapted and taken on by the New Tech Network, but they adapted it from, or stole it, adapted it, changed it, modified it from work done by somebody else, Adria Steinberg and her 6 A's, Real Learning, Real Work. And the 6 A's are authenticity, academic rigor, applied learning, active exploration, adult connections, and assessment practices. This link takes you to a project idea rubric that's aligned with the 6 A's. So if you want more information on these, please utilize that resource there. Gold standard projects. This is from Buck Institute. And again, it's adapted from the work of other people. It's also in a book called Rigorous PBL by Design, which is a newer book, and a lot of people are referencing it so that they can ensure their PBL is rigorous and high quality. So Buck Institute's gold standards: challenging problem or question, sustained inquiry, authenticity, student voice and choice, reflection, critique and revision, and public products. So a lot here that was common with high quality PBL's list, probably because they're sponsored by Buck Institute. But there's still some commonalities with the 6 A's as well. And this resource at the bottom is a nice little checklist with some further information on each of these. So as you're planning a project or looking at a project, you can do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, whether or not it's meeting these things, or question if you're not quite sure. This graphic is around the gold standard PBL from Buck Institute. It has those elements we just looked at, but it also has teaching practices that they believe are necessary for gold standard project-based learning. So this is a nice little graphic that you can use. If you click on the image, it takes you to a link of the image, the JPEG, I think, or it might be a PNG. A little resource for you. Okay, so pause, a pun, pause and reflect. I'd like you to take a moment to think about what we just looked at from different people of what quality project-based learning looks like. So think about what you just saw, what your reactions are, your takeaways, and go ahead and add to the chat maybe your biggest takeaway about PBL from what we just saw. And I'm going to wait 2 minutes. I'll put a little timer up too, so that you have 2 minutes to respond about your biggest takeaway about project-based learning, or any reactions or thoughts to what we just saw, while I find my little timer. There we go. I'll wait 2 minutes. And I'll add a little note with information. All right, so I added a little prompt at the bottom to get you thinking further, but let's see. Let me scroll up a little bit. Good resources, glad you like them. Oh, missed one. Sorry, I should just make my chat box bigger so I don't have to scroll. And PBL is much, sorry, I'm trying to find where we left off. I think it was here. Application of learned content. PBL is much more than doing projects, much overlap with what we experience in the real world as adults. Good resources, glad you like them. Loved comparing projects to real PBL. PBL needs to include a real world problem, student guided, presented to public, driving question or questions. A lot of reflection is an important component of PBL. The students do the research investigation of a real world problem. The projects are authentic and students will realize their relevance in real work. Yeah, I completely agree. I think the most important aspects to me are the inquiry, that students are have inquiry and are questioning versus just doing and doing what they're told to do. The authenticity is huge. They're doing something that's real and meaningful. And then the authentic piece comes into that culminating event as well. It's not just a presentation to each other or to the teacher. There's a real purpose, and their work lives on, whether it's for a client or it goes in the community or it lives somewhere. It's real, and there's a real audience for it. I think those are the most important pieces, which align with what you just said as well. So, okay, that's PBL. Now let's look at the 11 elements of high quality CTE. This, if you click on this image, it takes you, it's a link to the full image with all of the full poster, I guess, and it's all of the 11 elements and the sub-elements. Most of you said you were really familiar with these, so I won't spend too much time and read everything, but the 11 main elements are leadership at all levels, high quality curriculum and instruction, career exploration and guidance, student support and student leadership development, industry partnerships, system alignment and coherence, effective organizational design, system responds to economic demands, skilled faculty and professional development, evaluation, accountability, and continuous improvement, and CTE promotion, outreach, and communication. So here's another little graphic. We have that same gold standard PBL graphic from Buck Institute, and then a different type of graphic for those 11 elements of high quality CTE. And this is just a nice way to compare them visually in that sense. But let's really look at how PBL and the 11 elements overlap, or where they overlap. So I've highlighted the elements and sub-elements where the two align. This does not mean that if you're doing PBL, you automatically meet these things. That's not the case. Just because you're doing project-based learning does not mean you automatically meet each element and sub-element. But if you're doing project-based learning, you can meet these through project-based learning. So again, if you click on this, it takes you to the larger poster of it. And I feel that if you're doing a project, and we'll look at this in a different format, you are able to meet the needs of professional development and support at all levels if you're doing project-based learning. There's a lot of alignment between high quality PBL and high quality curriculum and instruction, because it is high quality curriculum and instruction, and you can meet pathway standards and core academic standards, work-based learning. You can teach all aspects of industry through PBL. You embed technology through PBL, and you're aligned academically through PBL. There's career exploration in project-based learning. There's not necessarily the opportunity to do the 4-year plan or intentionally, specifically guide and counsel students, but there is a career exploration component. Student leadership, there's a lot of it in project-based learning. Now, if you're not doing a CTSO, you're not doing a CTSO. But project-based learning can meet a lot of the alternate strategies for embedding leadership. We'll look at that in a little bit, each of the different alternate strategies. Industry partnerships are a huge part of high-quality project-based learning. The adult connections and having a real, authentic person means you have industry partnerships. System alignment and coherence, that cross-disciplinary collaboration. Project-based learning lends itself really well to multiple disciplines working together, and students having to connect multiple disciplines in order to solve the problem they're working on through a project. Even effective organizational design, and we'll look a little more at what that means, but project-based learning lends itself to project work, work-based learning outside of the classroom, and to professional development that works for students and teachers outside of traditional times. Let's see, system response to economic demands. If you're working with your partners to plan projects and you're looking at what is happening in your community, you're partnering with your stakeholders. And again, we'll go more into detail about that. Professional development activities, there's a lot regarding project-based learning because there's a lot of heavy hitters out there. Buck Institute provides a lot of PBL professional development. There's PBL World, there's New Tech Network, there's webinars, there's a lot of professional development available around project-based learning. And then CTE promotion, outreach, and communication. If you're doing projects and work out in the community and you have real presentations of learning, that's an excellent way to promote your programs and promote the relevant and rigorous work students are doing. So let's dig a little deeper into each of these. This chart is another way of looking at those highlighted pieces. I'm going to open up the document. Again, if you click on this image, it takes you to the Google Doc of this chart so that you can see the full chart. And I'm going to share my screen again so we can look at it. All right, here we go. So this document looks at it from the individual element, the 11 elements element, and then how project-based learning aligns. So when we're looking at leadership at all levels, when you have teachers designing projects, it gives them ownership and empowerment over what they're doing, which means that it's leadership for the teachers. And then project-based learning, professional development is available for every level for teachers, administrators, counselors, and there's also project-based learning support for every level as well, meeting the leadership at all levels. And that comes through what is already out there around project-based learning and PBL and CTE. What we're doing right now, is professional development for every level. All right, the big chunk though, the biggest alignment is through high quality curriculum and instruction. So these little bullet points outline how projects are essentially high quality curriculum and instruction. They focus on teaching specific and important knowledge that's aligned with pathway standards, core academic standards. It's also aligned with workplace rigor. So you're learning soft skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. Students have the opportunity to practice and learn those skills through project-based learning when they don't always have that opportunity through traditional learning or even in a traditional CTE classroom. That's not always taught. Inquiry is sustained over time. Like we talked about, inquiry is really important in project-based learning. Project-based learning should be academically rigorous. There should be a lot of reading, writing, critical thinking involved, students working together to solve problems. And projects have an authentic context. It involves real-world tasks, tools, quality standards, makes a real impact on the world. All of that aligns with high-quality curriculum and instruction. The career exploration piece comes in because when you are doing a project, you're taking on the role of somebody else. You might be a scientist or a biotechnician or a designer or a marketer, but you get to explore different careers and roles inside those, or different industries and careers inside the industry through project-based learning. And again, through PBL, students are required to do field-based or experimental research. This helps them explore different careers. When they're actually out in the world doing real work through a project, they're exploring their careers and what they might be interested in. Student support and student leadership development. So this is where we look at some of our alternative leadership strategies. This link right here, which if you're only looking at this on the webinar, you can't access this link unless you're on the document, but we will look at this document a little bit later, so I won't pull it up right now. But PBL teaches and embeds leadership activities. It aligns with a lot of different alternative leadership strategies, meets the needs of all students. So when we're talking about equity, through PBL, you can meet the needs of all of your students, high achieving students, students who need a lot more support, English learners, non-traditional students, and your general pop. PBL meets the needs of everybody. And students are working in diverse, inclusive, integrated teams. And then, yeah, okay, I'm not going to read word for word each of these bullet points. That will take too long. Industry partnerships, like we talked about. Work-based learning, it should be embedded in high-quality project-based learning. You should have people participating as guest speakers throughout a project, mentors coming in to help students get the best end product possible. Students should have multiple contacts with outside adults who have expertise and experience. And outside adults provide students with a sense of real-world standards. You can even have job shadows and internships as part of the project-based learning experience. depending on what the project is. System alignment and coherence. Projects involve cross-curricular or cross-disciplinary collaboration, and projects require students to connect multiple disciplines. So even if they're working on one content area, one CTE class is doing project-based learning, because of the project, students should be connecting multiple disciplines in order to solve the problem they're working on. They should be looking at history, reading and writing, doing math, science, depending on the concept of the project or what the context is. They should be connecting the dots in order to solve the problem and connecting multiple disciplines. Effective organizational design. Project work provides opportunities for better use of out-of-school time for work-based learning activities and career exploration. That's relevant to the project. And education and training for both students and teachers at times and locations that are convenient, including non-traditional time or methods. So this means that students could be researching from home, right? They could be doing a webinar or doing a tutorial from home outside of the traditional time. PBL allows for that kind of work. Teachers can be doing professional development outside of traditional times. You might have part of a project where students, I already said research, but maybe they are interviewing somebody in the industry and they have to do it outside of the normal time and not in class, or they're doing the hybrid where they're doing some online work, working on a Google Doc together. It allows for more flexibility in terms of organization when they're doing project-based learning. System responds to economic demands. So students and teachers should be partnering with stakeholders to solve problems and address needs in the community. If they're doing high-quality PBL, they're working on real projects with a real purpose, and they should be working with stakeholders to do that. And teachers, when they partner with local businesses to plan relevant and meaningful projects, that's part of responding to economic demands, right, through project-based learning. Skilled faculty and PD, I've talked a lot about professional development around project-based learning, so there that is. And then the promotion, outreach, and communication piece. When students' work is made public, that's a way of promoting their CTE program. If it's their work lives beyond the classroom, so, and I'm going to show you a lot of examples later, but if a biology class is working with a multimedia class and they design plaques that go in a local garden for people to walk through, and maybe they connect QR codes or something and they can hear information about plants or something in the area, their work is living on, and that work helps promote the program and pathway, as long as you brand it somehow, right? So people know who did it. But if you're doing real public work, it's promotion and outreach. Students are asked to publicly explain the reasoning behind their choices. So again, they're presenting in a public audience, and this could look a lot of different ways. Entities or persons outside of school will use the product of student work. So if people are really using students' work, then it's promotion and outreach. Projects often involve student classroom and or teacher websites, and culminating events, exhibitions of learning are being promoted. Again, promotion and outreach. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go back, and while I'm doing this, go ahead and I'll take a minute to think on what we just saw and ask any questions if you have them. Go ahead and add them to the chat if you have any questions while I get back to the presentation. You can also click the raised hand icon if you have a question, but you need time to type it out. Okay, I'm going to keep pushing forward then. This chart is another way of looking at what we just looked at. Again, you can click on this to open it up in a Google Doc. And I do need to thank the people who I stole this from. I saw this at a presentation at the 2017 CTE conference in Palm Springs. So this is their document, but it's another way of looking at what we just looked at. Instead of the 11 elements on the left-hand side, they're looking at those essential project design elements from the Buck Institute and then showing how CTE measures align with it. So just another way of looking at what we just saw. Okay, this is the alternative leadership strategies piece. So each of these columns, if you click on one of them, it will take you to a Google Doc that's larger than this. And the Google Doc shows all of the alternative leadership strategies that have been suggested by CTE if you're embedding leadership via alternate strategies, which CTE highly encourages CTSOs. They much prefer CTSOs. But if you're looking at alternate strategies, the Google Doc, which I'll share my screen again for, has them all listed in columns, and the stuff in green are the things that align with project-based learning. Screen share my screen. There we go. Okay, so it doesn't meet everything, but the things in green can be met through high-quality PBL. In high-quality project-based learning, students should be conducting self-assessments. They should be maintaining a personal portfolio. They should be participating in a peer review process or processes. They should be demonstrating knowledge of local, state, national, and international issues. Using professional communication with industry partners and peers. Manage time and tasks, meeting deadlines. Partner with industry mentor to build a skill or to prepare for competition. They should be practicing project management and serving as project managers. This one might not be like in every project, but project-based learning, they can mentor younger students through project-based learning. That can look differently if you have different levels combined, different levels working together, or maybe a project is specifically your high schoolers working with middle schoolers or elementary schoolers because of the context of the project. And yes, I will share the presentation at the end of this presentation, and I'll also email it out to everybody who registered for the webinar. I'll give you a link to the Google slide version of the presentation, so you'll have access to it and all the links. Part of every project usually incorporates students participating and sometimes even leading team building activities. Part of project-based learning is that they are developing a real-world problem solution, provide opportunities for others to grow as part of PBL, give recognition to another team member. You might have to work a little harder to make sure that that happens, but you can do that through project-based learning. And yes, Eric, I'll make sure you get this too. Prepare and deliver a community presentation. That should be part of high-quality PBL. Produce industry partners for work-based learning activities. Create a CTE pathway recruitment program or event. So that might need to be a little more intentionally sought after, but it can be part of PBL, or can be achieved through PBL, I should say. And then plan, organize, and complete a community event. Same thing. You might start, if you're new to project-based learning, where you're doing most of the planning, but as you get practiced with it and your students get practiced with it, they can be the ones who take on leadership roles and plan and organize the events that are related to their projects. Okay, let me go back to my presentation. And again, think on this for a minute. Ask any questions. One more comment. Put in a plug for the project design workshop Lacey will present on 2/26 in Santa Cruz. Yes, I am doing a project design workshop, a full-day workshop to help guide teachers through designing a high-quality project. And it is recommended for any secondary teacher, not just CTE. And it's on Basecamp, and I can also share the registration link with you if you'd like it. Okay, sorry, that was a little detour. But okay, while you think on everything we just saw and let it soak in, I have another little poll for you. So we just saw a lot of information about how PBL and CTE connect and where they overlap. So I'm wondering from you, and I need to find my little poll, how strong of a relationship do you think there is between project-based learning and high-quality CTE? So from what we just saw, do you think 1, there's a very weak link, or 5, an extremely strong link between the two? I'll wait another little bit to see if anyone else wants to respond. I'm hoping after what you just saw, you're thinking a 3, 4, 5, that there's a pretty strong link, pretty strong correlation between the two. There are differences. They're not completely identical, but there is a strong correlation. Okay, nobody else seems to be responding, so let's go ahead and hide this. All right, before I start showing you examples, and there's a lot of examples, I'm wondering if you have any ideas of examples of high quality projects that might align with the 11 elements of high quality CTE. So if you have any project ideas, go ahead and add your thoughts to the chat. I'll wait a minute. I'll add a little timer. And then I have a lot of projects to share with you. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone else is typing. So we have some good thoughts. Students create and run a business with real clients. Construction classes working on a tiny house to ultimately serve as staff housing. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? I want to live in a tiny house. Create, organize, complete a summer tech camp for kids. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's fantastic. Okay, so I have some to share with you, and this is this example here is from the presentation I saw, and the people who presented are Eileen Bagg-Rizzo, who's a curriculum specialist, and Teresa Stanley, who's a math and digital fabrication teacher. And I forget the school they're at, but I think they're from down south, and they presented in Palm Springs. So I need to give them some credit. I stole a lot of their information, and I have some of my own as well. This is a video contest, and this image takes you to a document where they outline for you how the video project meets the CTE measures that align with the essential project design elements from Buck Institute. So you can look at that as you wish. It was a video contest for STEM education where students created videos, and they worked in CEO teams, so applied business concepts, utilized technology, career research, and the authentic audience was a judging panel. This next slide is a link to a video about the project. So I'm not going to play it on my end. If you click this video link, it will play on your end, but we are running out of time. So I'm going to ask that if you want to watch this, you watch it after, because I have a lot more projects to share with you, and I want to make sure you're able to see those. But it is a great little video so that you can actually see this project, or an end product of the project, and how it worked in a CTE, PBL and CTE. So these are more examples of cross-curricular projects. So this is a manufacturing project that incorporated history, English, math, and design. These are links to some of the documents. This is a planning form for the project and a little more information about the Victory Garden, but you can see some of the design and manufacturing pieces. There's more information on the planning form. This was a culinary project where teams worked together to pitch food items to ASB and clubs who would sell the food for fundraisers. So first the students pitched their ideas, then they prepared the food items that would be sold, and then the clubs sold them for the fundraiser. And teams also presented to industry professionals and got feedback. Again, there's a planning form for the project if you want more information on it. So it has a lot of details about the project if you're interested. This was a welding and manufacturing project that also incorporated English and history. It was a haunted house project. The students researched the origins of Halloween, researched cultural differences. They created backdrops for display, and welders turned the welding shop into a haunted house. And they also did welding as part of it, not just, decorating their shop. Game design and ICT, English, history, game design, all together. They researched battles from historical events. They wrote script for a game, they developed games about battle, and they created a web page to market the game and receive feedback from users. They also presented to guest judges. So you can still do an integrated project if you're one person. Your students might not just go as deep into the other areas, but if you're the CTE teacher of game design, you might still have them research battles, but they might not go as in-depth into it as they would if they were also in a history class. But if you're able to do this as a CTE teacher, you can then connect with a core academic teacher and say, hey, look, my kids are doing this project, or will be doing, or did do this project, and we had this historical component. Is this something you're interested in working on with me? Vice versa, if you're an academic teacher, you can do the same thing. Your kids can build a website or create a very simplified game. If either you don't have the CTE sector on your campus, or if you want to be able to reach out to them, like my students are creating games for a project. Is this something you'd be willing to work on with me? All right, keep looking. A 3D puzzle project, math design. It was math and design, where students designed, sketched, and prototyped these 3D puzzles. They used Autodesk Inventor and a 3D printer. This is one my students did. It was a combination of math, design, and art, and students created Escher tessellations. They created their own tessellation in the style of MC Escher using Adobe Illustrator. It involved researching art, history in Escher, looking at tessellations in terms of translations, reflections, and rotations. It's the math piece. They did hand-drawn tessellations. They applied their designs to real products, and then physically produced objects to be sold. So these aren't the physical objects. These were when they were digitally applying the design to potential physical products. And there's more examples of projects on these three sites. This first link takes you to our Napa College and Career Readiness Project Library, where there's project cards with multiple cross-curricular projects that combine CTE and core academics. High Tech High has a site called Unboxed, where they have tons of projects. They're not all necessarily CTE classes, but they usually have some kind of a career lens. So a CTE teacher could easily adapt it and go even deeper into the CTE aspect of it. And then CTE Online, if you're not familiar with them, is a great resource. It's free. You do need to register, but it's free. And there's a lot of projects that are both cross-curricular or just standalone for singleton CTE teachers. There are a lot of planning tools for you here for project-based learning, and we're getting to the end. Okay, so I'm not going to open these all, but there's a lot of different planning tools that you can use if you're interested. Some are from High Tech High, some are from New Tech Network, some are from the Buck Institute, some are from individual schools and teachers. It's always good to beg, borrow, and steal in education. So lots of different resources that can potentially be used. I recommend looking them over, finding one that resonates with you the most, and then trying it out and either using it or modifying it, adapting it. But as a teacher or as a coordinator or an administrator, you just use what you like the best, what works for you, because we're all different. All of our classrooms are different. All of our students are different. All of our school sites are different. So we got to use what works best for us. And then this is a list of all of the resources you've seen. So when I send you the presentation, you don't have to go back and click in each image. This links out all of the resources throughout this presentation. And finally, before we go into Q&A, it's 4:25, I just would appreciate if you would take a minute to reflect on what you've seen and answer this question in the chat. how do you think you will utilize what you have learned from this webinar? I know webinars are short and a lot of information gets thrown at you, so you will have all these resources, but I'm hoping you'll be able to actually take something away and use it, so that this was a good use of your time. So one more time, how do you think you will utilize what you have learned from this webinar? And go ahead and add your answer, add your thoughts to the chat. Okay, those are good thoughts. I saw about the advisory board. I wanted to add one. I know it's 4:27, so okay, I'll add this at the end. I want you guys to go out on time. You can stay and listen to me if you want. This is a list of our upcoming professional development. This is the workshop Les mentioned, and I won't go over each one. There's a link at the bottom if you want to have customized training. I know it says PBL. That was when I first thought of it, but I'm happy to customize any kind of training you'd like. If you want maybe an expansion of one of the webinars or something, or repeat of a workshop, I'm happy to come to you and give you what you need. So fill that out. And then there's time for Q&A. If you have questions, oh, and follow me on Twitter and our director, our department. Yay, Twitter. You can email. Thank you for being here. I'm going to make a little note about the advisory board if you want to stay on. But if you need to leave, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you attending. I'll email out the recording of this because I recorded it, the slide presentation with the links to the resources. That will all go to you on Monday. And I think Monday. It'll go to you soon, if not tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday. And if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat. Or if you'd prefer to talk one-on-one, I can enable your audio and your video, and we can chat if you'd like. Okay, so the piece about the advisory board, if you're staying on and you want to hear this, we recently had our a big advisory breakfast, and it went really well. But some of our feedback was that industry partners wanted to be even more involved, and involving them in the project planning process is a great way to do that. Or in just the project itself, reaching out to your advisory board. If you have an idea for a project and running it by them, getting their feedback is a great way to start. If you've already started a project, you can reach out to your advisory board to come in as mentors throughout the way, give feedback to your students. You can incorporate them in the presentation that students are giving. There's a lot of ways to involve your industry partners and your advisory boards within project-based learning. So that was it. Most of you have logged off already, and that's fine. I'm just chatting away. If you're still on and you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat or let me know if you want to talk, and I'll enable your audio or your audio and or video. All right. Les, I think it's just you and I, so I'm going to log off. Thanks for being here, Les, and putting that plug in for the workshop.